Joining us for our Navigating the New EDGAR web conference. This training is for both rounds of California Career Pathways Trust grantees. With us, you have me, Lisa Reimers. We also have Abby Medina and Christine Best. And we would like to welcome Sherry Davis, who's a consultant with our Perkins unit, who is very knowledgeable on these regulations, and she was willing to come in and share her knowledge with us. So I'll hand it over to Sherry. If you have questions, please type it in the Q&A box, and we will answer questions at the end of the presentation. We'll be recording the presentation and putting it on our digital chalkboard, hopefully by the end of next week.
Well, good. And here we go. And some of you may have attended some of the other EDGAR trainings with friends in adult ed in May. And if you have, then this will be a refresher course for you. And if you didn't, well, hopefully you're awake. It's exciting. Basically, we'll go kind of some of the overview. We did cut it down for the Ccpt because some of it's really not relevant to state funding, but what is more similar to. So that's why we picked this portion of it. Financial management, as well as the allowability and inventory, and then monitoring audits. A lot of that will stay, but there are a few differences. So you'll see that as we go through the slides. The EDGAR link, where you can either download the EDGAR for yourself, you can purchase the book, you can do the PDF version. If you would like to print out certain sections, that's what you do with the PDF link, or just electronically, so you have it for easy access. The other thing is, as I said, she'll have it on digital chalkboard, so that's why you don't have a link strictly from us like we did during the Perkins and Adult Ed one. She'll be taking care of that later.
For this slide, we just wanted to remind everybody what the award start and end date is for both rounds of the CCPT. Funds are going out, payments have started rolling out, but take note of the award end date for the round that you were awarded in, because all funds will have to be spent by that date.
Management controls, someone needs to know, and the reason we are kind of including this picture is we have fewer headaches down the road from the feds all around for any funds that you use for your program. We don't want you looking like this later. Examine financial management controls, the Office of the Inspector General, which is from the federal level, single audits, which you guys get from your local auditing companies, as well as program monitoring visits from the CD staff, and how they hold those with you. In the sections, and we just kind of bring this up so that you know that if you're looking for definitions on terms, that you look for general provisions, some pre-award requirements as well as post-award requirements, a lot of cost principles, which we call objectives, or within your category codes, and the auditing requirements. So on the crosswalk was the difference between new, and what Lisa has went through here was looking at what is new, what applies to the CCPT, allowing you guys, or what you guys need. So identification of your awards, you know you got or what you were awarded, as financial reporting and tracking all that, account records, your documents, keeping those on file for auditing purposes, internal control and knowing how things are working, and filings by deadlines, budgets, and making sure you're sticking to your budgets and spending by the last due date, as she mentioned earlier. And then having local written cash management procedures on what your guys are doing and how you use funds, such as the state grants and the federal grants, and then availability procedures and how and what you do within what the requirements are. The monitoring, accurate and complete disclosure of financial results of each award. So entities such as yourself must submit performance reports at intervals required by the state. Expenditure reports are due annually. Progress reports are due annually. and you may find a little variance when it comes to different state grants on what will be due, whether it's quarterly, annually. But for the CCPT, it's annually for the expenditure and progress report. The new performance matrix is what the feds have kind of said we need to use. Definitely federal funds, but what the state has looked at, thinking that why not align the state money to what the fed's not confusing. A lot of you oversee the same funds. So if we can keep things as consistent between each of the funding sources, it will be easier for all of you. Accomplishments to your objectives. So what did you say you were going to do? What did you get done? The goals weren't met, if perhaps, or if they were even looked at or you changed them. Additional pertinent information. Today, cost of overruns and high unit costs is not something that the school would have to worry about, but you may have found that you should one other person you didn't plan or budget for it, and then you're kind of at a point to get a lot of things accomplished because you were short of a person, which we have. Significant funding team must be informed when problems, delays, or adverse conditions where the ability to meet the objectives of the award. And development such as finishing sooner, which is usually not a school thing because this is not something we can finish quicker because students have to be in school so many days, regardless if they're in secondary or at the college level. They've got to be there, and that's just the way it is. So that one really doesn't apply so much to education. The delays, adverse conditions, where you might see some instances where in California we have lovely wildfires. They burn down. That can be an adverse condition that's going to prevent you from meeting that. When there's snow and ice or floods or what have you, earthquakes. We live in a world here of all kinds of Mother Nature issues that affect this. Would it? Maybe ways, but the possibility is there. So you know that you can allow us to or notify us about the adverse conditions or problems. When you do your source documentation, these need to be kept on file so that when there are audits, then you can get to them and show the auditor, whether it's a single audit or the state audit or a federal audit, you can show documents provide for receiving the award. So for awards really is not Ccpt because that's state funding, but the authorizations and your signature pages, your GANs, things like that, your obligation of funds, your allocated balances, your financial reports, or ledgers, whatever you like to call them, your assets, plus your inventory, and having them tagged and located and easily found and verified every couple of years. The expenditures be shown through POs, invoices, and your ledgers. Income, that was the case, which is not something that with money done, but and interest is also something because there is no. Do you guys? I may have to say carry over. So then potentially they may have a little interest that builds up, but it's allowed. So with some carryover, so it's not. Essentially, 80.20 for those of you that might have been familiar is effective controls over the accountability of all funds, property, and other assets, and you must adequately safeguard all assets and use assets solely for their authorized purposes. And we get the documentation in there, the 200.303, and as well as some of these other slides, so you can easily go back and find the documentation or citing for your reference later. Inventory mentioned the Fed's cost principles, typically state with Perkins as well as Fed and probably the CPT with state funding is we call them cost objectives. So one is instruction, curriculum development, professional development, transportation, admin costs, whatever. Those are what we're talking about with the cost principles or cost objectives. The kind of definition of what the Feds say: program, function, activity, award, organizational subdivision contract, for which the cost data was or design for which provision is made to accumulate, and job and the capital product. capital projects, et cetera. Call them something different at the civil or with federal funds at state level. Number is all costs to be necessary and reasonable and applicable. And I really kind of that word because my mouth can use it. I'll say it right now. So allow state law and grant terms consistent with state and local policies, consistently treated, so that who got a grant in round 1 is treated the same way the people that got a grant in round 2, you know, kind of reverse. Is consistently treated between other funding sources, so other funding grants should be treating you consistently as well as the other federal grants. So if they all require this, then we all should be treating it the same. Not included as a match, especially for the upcoming CT incentive grant, and some may be upset with that, but the legislators pointed that out mainly because it is a regional grant with a Ccpt, not individual, so you cannot absolutely say how much you got in order to match. So that's why it will not be included as a match for your CT incentive grant. Add it documented to make sure you are keeping track of everything that you spend. Big thing, direct versus indirect salary costs. Or administrative or clerical staff should be treated as indirect unless all are met. So these bullets here have to be able to meet them in a documented format in order to claim direct and indirect, because if not, then it all goes under indirect. So 1, such services are integral to the activity. 2, the individuals can be specifically identified with the activity. Such explicitly included in the budget. Costs not also recovered as indirect, which is the big kicker, because if part of it being done as indirect and you're trying to also take salary as direct, then you can't do that. Rules, time distribution records, standards for documentation on the personal expenses. All funds are used for salaries, then time distribution records are required. And demonstrate the equity paid in whole or in part with federal funds or state funds used to meet match or cost share requirements. You got to document how many hours or time activities that were relevant to the CCPT versus other funding sources that you are paying them from. So they're going to be using multi-funded more than likely for some of your employees. Some might, but they should be doing an activity report showing the activities are related to what they're being paid for or from that source. If they're on a single cost objective or solely out of CCPT or other funds, they do semi-annual certification. Basically, after the fact, they account for the total activity. They're signed by the employer or the supervisor, and then at least twice a year, every 6 months. Bless you. If they are multi-funded, they're going to do that personal activity report where employees being paid on multiple cost objectives or multiple ones. So after that, they count the full activity, they're signed by the employee, and they are prepared at least monthly and coincide with 1 or more pay periods. Must be based on records that accurately reflect the work performed and must be supported by a system of internal controls which provides reasonable assurance charges are accurate, allowable, and properly allocated. They must be incorporated into the official records, which usually your HR, they're getting a paycheck from your district or your state. They're going to be incorporated in the official records. Reflect the total activity for which employee is compensated, not to exceed 100%, which means you can't promise the employee $1,000 and say that you're taking $50,000 out of CCPT and then $50,000 out of some other fund, because then you're kind of going to one or both funds. So therefore, you can't exceed what you've listed that they're going to be making, and did another one. You told us they're making 100 and you're splitting it, that's different. Encompasses federal and non, comply with established accounting policy practices, support distribution among specific activities or cost objectives. The other point are overtime, because I learned from a few of my districts I deal with that do not charge overtime for a job that you're supposed to be working just basically 4 hours a week. So there's overtime with grants. Just that up. Also, budget estimates alone do not qualify supporting charges to the federal awards. Same thing as Ccpt. I'd like to take that on that they don't budget estimates, they're actual. Purchases could be used. You can 50% of their time is going to be done, and as long as they don't go over the 50%, well, then you're fine to go under, then that's fine. Property management. So you must have adequate controls in place to the location of the equipment that you purchase, with those the custody of the equipment, the security of the equipment. They mentioned EDGAR before, and what we keep referring to is the fact that if there are shared uses, that it will interfere with the original purpose. So if you bought a brand new computer lab for information technology class, and have another class that wants to borrow it that's non-CTE, because you've got to do some other reports or what have you, then they can interfere with that classroom's daily instruction. If it's a prep time and another class or teacher wants to use it, and the teacher's not using it or holding a class, that's fine. If you're doing testing and it's required, then that's a little different story. But work that out, because you can't bump a CTE class to get a non-CTE class priority into equipment that was purchased as well as I believe the CCT would like their courses have to be bumped for other classes that weren't funded. So the and the other side of it is there is a you can't trade in equipment now to replace outdated or obsolete equipment. So as some manufacturers offer that ability, and we used to never was able to allow that, which the Federal Education has said, or the saying trade-in is allowed. You just have to be able to document on the invoice or with your inventory that these were traded in, you got so much of an allowance, and this is how the cost is now on these items. You just have to document everything. If we should have took off the odd code 6, we forgot, that's the adult ed. So ignore the bottom note part, adult ed financing. Anything is considered to be supplies, so that's your 4,000 object code. And with the Fed equipment, they're talking about that capital outlay of 6,000, object code 6,000, anything 5,000 or more. There's other equipment that's less than that, and we say to put that in the object code 4,000. Devices are they now put into object code 4,000 because they're considered a supply. The lifespan, as you guys all know from working with them, just as long as other pieces of equipment. So therefore, they're put into the supplies equipment that they wear out quicker. As well as their cost is less than $5,000 each. Now you may get 30 of them that cost you $10,000, but that's not $5,000 each. And the definitions of what a computing is, because I believe we all know that, but the feds felt that we needed to know it and define it, so there it is for you in case you weren't sure. The grantee must maintain effective controls and safeguard all assets, and they are used solely for the office purposes. It's not a federal requirement, but it is in the state ed code inventory. Every board of each district shall establish and maintain a historical inventory, which means spending a time. Okay. Inventory for an audit trace system, where this education authorizes it, or your local agency authorizes it, as well as make a change. The name, identification numbers, cost of the items acquired, so long as the market value is $500 or more per item, the date of the acquisition, the location, the time and mode of the disposal, so that there comes a point that you get rid of it, trade in, or got lost, stolen, or damaged, that you notate that on the inventory. A reestimate of the original cost may be used for the actual original cost is not known. And that would be because of those LEAs or districts who need to go back and start dating that historical inventory. And so you know how much that costs. So best guess at what would it cost you today replace it if you had to, is what I always tell districts to put down. Original date of purchase, if it's been 5 years because you don't know because it hasn't been taken care of, I always tell them put greater than 5 years, kind of thing, because you can't find the paperwork, you got to put something. And then put it from this point forward. I hope. The property must maintain, including the description of the property, as I talked about, the serial number, other identification numbers that may require by your district. Maybe they need something to make that it's in a CCPT fund or OP fund or Perkins, whatever the case is. The source of the property, the acquisition date, the cost of the property, percentage of the federal participation in the cost of the property or location. So if you split funded something between a federal state grant, you need to notate that in that column. The low use, like I mentioned earlier, and the ultimate disposition of the property. Is it good, fair? What is the disposition of the property? The time that we vary with that under $500 is with something that's considered highly pilferable, like video cameras, tablets, things like that, that'll walk off in a backpack. So we highly suggest that you inventory and tag those as well, because even though they might not cost a lot to begin with, if you replace them all the time, it's going to be a problem. Plus, it raises flags with us at the state of why you're not keeping control of your property like you're required. Inventory of the property must be taken and reconciled every 2 years, at least every 2 years. We recommend more, but every 2 years. That's enough. And also has control systems to develop to ensure the adequate safeguards, like I said, to prevent loss, damage, or theft of the property. And those loss, damage, or theft should be investigated by the school and turn in reports to CE, as well as completing a equipment form to let us know what happened to that equipment or pieces of equipment. The adequate may be developed to keep the property in good running condition. So if something costs anything and you can get repaired and it's cheaper to repair it than it is to replace it, then keep it maintained and repair it. If it is authorized or requires to sell the property, the proper sales procedures must be established to ensure the highest possible bid or return for the equipment. To add that we always say that that has to go back into CTE. It cannot go back into the general fund just for the school districts to use however they willy-nilly feel when they sell off the equipment. So if federal Perkins funds pay for it, it has to go into the CTE programs that are there to purchase more equipment. So I'm not sure how you guys are going to handle that.
As far as CCPT, if that were to happen, it should support a CCPT pathway because that speaks to the sustainability piece of our grant. Okay. There you go. Monitoring the fund is for collection and transmission of storage. When original records are electronic and cannot be altered, there is no need to create and retain paper copies. Original records are paper. Electronic versions may be substituted through the use of duplication or other forms of electronic media, provided they are subject to periodic quality control reviews, reasonable safeguards against alteration, and remain readable, because we know if we make copies of copies of copies, they don't stay readable. So if you have that's paper-wise, I'd scan it, PDF it now while it's legible, and then you always have it, and it won't matter how many times you print it out. And change when it's PDF. Recipients to assure the compliance and performance goals achieved. Monitoring will include the review of financial and programmatic reports, ensure corrective action, and issue management decisions on findings. Basically, it's like an FPM if you've been to a federal program monitoring process. We review files as well as the program reports and review the programs. There's something changed, then we give you the corrective action, and if we find that you're still not correcting the action and there's a problem, then there's more of a management decision on state level on how we would handle the district with the, depending on assessment of risk. The monitoring tools may be useful to ensure proper accountability and compliance with the program requirements.
One, training and technical assistance on program-related matters. So any departmental trainings that the CCPT staff holds, whether virtually like this webinar, or in person, or throughout the state, you should be attending in order to stay on top of any of the requirements or changes. These are done. Updates that they get from the state law that they need to pass down to you. On-site use as part of the monitoring process, and arranging for agreed-upon procedures and arrangements for those that maybe missed going training, did call out for an on-site view, that you guys would agree upon a procedure between C and your local area or district. Required, CD must consider taking enforcement based upon non-compliance. So if they have problems with how you've overseen a CCPT grant, they could temporarily hold any more cash payments pending corrective action. They could disallow all or part of the cost, or partially suspend the award. They could recommend the awarding agency suspension of environment, and that would be legally advisable. So just similar from what we had said with the feds on the restrictions on how to use funds and whether or not you're doing it right. EDGAR links again for you. And like I said, they'll be available on digital chalkboards soon. And any questions that you ask? I know Lisa's ready to type.
Yeah, so you guys, if you have questions, please type them in the Q&A box, and we will read them off. I have one question so far. Question is to clarify, computers are not considered equipment, so they do not have to be inventoried?
No, the inventory, they're just not capital outlay where they're just in a different object code. Before we used to put them in 5,000 because they were servicing the class, but actually supplies, so they should be in 4,000. And it was more budgeting them as opposed to inventory, but yeah, they should be inventory.
EDGAR rules apply to district partners receiving funds from the CCPT fiscal agent. If you're talking about your partners, you want them to abide by the same rules. So that way, if you get audited, it'll be a seamless process and you'll have all your supporting documents from no matter where the purchase was made.
Yeah, I work in consortiums that everybody has to abide by the same rules.
Stand-in costs be allowed in the event of questioned costs. Can you clarify that a little bit?
There is no standing cost or question cost, so yeah, clarification on that question.
Yeah. Next question, is there a copy of the PowerPoint available to print somewhere? We can post the PowerPoint slides by themselves, and we'll also post the recording of this webinar as well, because I'm thinking a lot of you may want to incorporate some of our slides to a presentation for your consortia. So we will provide both on the digital chalkboard. Management. Do rules apply to all entities, non-vendors with capital outlays?
Yes. Yes, please. I'll take that as well.
Next, clarification. You mentioned letting CDEO, if any staff are split between two cost objectives. The amount they are receiving from CCPT grant is not their whole salary. Could you repeat that point?
I said was if something's multi-funded, they're going to be doing that personal activity report where they're going to be accounting for it every month and signing off on it, but they'll also be showing that they're paid from 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, well, 2 or actually, because it's not just 1, 2 are funding streams, and whatever it was, and each line from that funding stream should show 6 hours here, 6 hours there, 2 hours there, 1 hour here, 3 hours there, so that it equals their whole time, so that we can see how split and duties on those days should be relevant and documented. So if we, okay, on this day where you said you were 3 hours here, 2 hours here, and an hour over here, that's what you did. And if we see that your activities were only related to one stream, then we would ask the district to redo their books for the payment.
next, capital outlay purchases defined by expense.
Capital outlay is any one single item that is $5,000 or more, and that is a federal requirement.
And kept that as well. So any single item is $5,000. Can you clarify? Does that include taxes and shipping, or is it just the item amount?
That is the item prior to taxes, shipping, and installation, if required.
Next, fiscal agent needs to put on its inventory the capital items bought by its partner districts. You just want to ensure that your partner districts are following all the inventory guidelines that have been presented. So that way, if you get a visit and you say, for example, Chico High School bought this item, we go to Chico High School and we'll see it tagged and inventoried.
Yeah, and it will be on their inventory. So yes, one of the districts or members should have their own inventory, and everything should be listed accordingly.
Computing devices under 500, do they need to be inventoried? Let's get in there, that anything over 500.
Yes. If they are under $500 and they're considered highly pilferable, desktop or not, laptops are, then you need to inventory them.
Now, we were talking about time and effort for personnel costs. If staffed 100% CCPT, is this required? Station is 50% CCPT, 50% general fund, or that only if part of their salary is federal related?
It's for any federal or any state or federal source on salary. So if they are a sole funded with one funding source, CCPT, then you would send annual verification and certain of their duties as well as what they were paid. That one slide had said. If they are multi-funded, where two or more sources, that are going to have to do monthly PARs or personal activity reports and document the activities related to those expenditures going to those funding sources.
When employees getting a stipend out of the CCPT grant, should they also be filling out a monthly PAR?
Because you've got to document what it is and why you're paying them.
Should inmates have CCPT grant printed on them?
Either or some other specially designated member, so that on the inventory form when they come review, if it's what they say the CCPT numbers are, then it will be easy to say, oh, that item was purchased with CCPT versus that item was purchased with Perkins, or this one was purchased with adult. They all be kind of separate in numbers, unified in an easy format. So whatever's easiest for you.
Next question. What if a person is partially funded by one CCPT and partially funded by another? We are a fiscal agent for one and a consortium member for another, with a single person managing both.
I would do a monthly PARS personal activity for multi-funded because it's coming from two sources. So you're not going 100% since you're getting from two different grants, because that could be awesome.
Next, clear point about overtime.
Use on overtime for any state or federal grant is you're saying that within a 40-hour work week, what the job duties and requirements and responsibilities are. That's what those agree upon, and overtime is a district responsibility, not the federal grants that are supplemental.
Where an exception of vendors, entities that are being paid a fixed fee for a product or service and therefore not subject to the EDGAR rules.
I know of a vendor that would not be subject to EDGAR rules, because vendors are someone you're dealing with to buy equipment from, or supplies from, or getting services from. But yeah, you have to give more details on that, because really vendors per se, I mean, other federal contractors that deal with, you know, like art and things like that, that's like way different than education, though. So,
and that's a pretty specific question, so if you need more clarity on that, you can email one of the consultants or the Career Pathways email box, and we can work with our EDGAR specialist to get you a good answer on that one. Question, where can I find the monthly PARs?
Your human resources should have one designed. If not, we have a couple of templates that districts have designed and been really clear and useful for determining the activities as well as the hours and the funding streams that are paying those employees. So we can share those samples with you if your HR doesn't have one that looks like it's going to be included. It needs to be done now.
And that was about the next question was pretty similar. So if you do want an example, email us and we can work to get you an example. Can we questions and answers somewhere? Yes, we will be going through questions and answers, and ones that are very hot topics we'll definitely be putting on the FAQs on our site. Christine has been writing diligently, so we're getting them written.
Because it's recorded, it'll also be here on the website when they move the recording over there.
Next question, what email address should we send the request to? You can send it to either careerpathways@cde.ca.gov, or if you've been in contact with your consultant, you can always ask the consultant that's assigned to your grantee, your consortia. A little bit longer if there's any more questions. As always, email us, call us. We are here to help you navigate through this. User and password to the EDGAR system going to be provided by our program monitor.
Their login, like I said, it's just a download so you can actually get the full EDGAR regulations. So I don't know about a login. It's just download the information so that you either have a hard copy or electronic version of all the EDGAR requirements.
If you're talking about PGMS, those have been sent out early in July. If you have not received your username and login for that, please email us. We will get that to you as soon as possible. I'd like to see more information on financial reporting.
Specifically, I mean, what are you looking for there? Because, I mean, your business office should have, but I mean, samples, we just need to specifically what you're looking for.
We did have an FAQ that gave examples of documentation that I found.
Okay. So there may be FAQs, but if that's not what you're looking for, please let one of us know.
Things like that submitted to the state. We have a quarterly report. All reporting for Ccpt is done annually, and it's all done through PGMS. When you log into PGMS, you have your budget. You'll also have a link that has the consortium points and the student momentum points where you'll enter everything in electronically. If you need help with that, there is a recorded web conference on that on our YouTube page, California Career Pathways Trust, and you can always contact your consultant or our regular box, and we'll help you with that. Here's questions. Are there any training sessions or conferences, workshops on EDGAR that CD is sponsoring or that you suggest to learn more on this topic?
Well, we had like 15 of them in May throughout the state, plus a webinar so I would say if you didn't attend one of those, Mike can contact one of the Perkins consultants with the region, depending on where you're at, which you could go to the Perkins webpage on CDE, because we can always shoot you the person of the PowerPoint, which is not too different from this one, but and answer questions more specifically. Sometimes we cover a little bit more at regional meetings. Depending on where you're at regionally, you may be scheduled for that.
Do you do regional meetings annually?
Semi-annually, spring and fall, or we all do spring and fall.
So if interested, send us an email and we can see if we can help you get to a meeting that's already been scheduled if it's in your area.
Yes. Region 1 for the Sept region, you call tomorrow at Mendocino County Office of Education, 9 to 2.
So,
hate it on you, but there you go.
So maybe on our digital chalkboard calendar, I could put presentations that you're going
Well, so they're going to be EDGAR, they're person
Or
related,
persons related.
but if they have questions, I'm happy to answer. I'm sure the other consultants will be too. It wouldn't be solely per EDGAR again, because we did
But
that
in financial, or no,
strictly.
not strictly, okay.
What is that question?
Is there going to be a conference again this year like last year's in Berkeley? If so, do we have tentative dates?
At the May Institute in Berkeley,
100%,
we
yes.
100%, but as far as on the RFA, we're required to do one a year. So if our next one would be 2016.
November 9th.
That's project directors.
Yeah.
All right, so and let you guys go. I'm sure you're all busy. And we will get this wrapped up and posted on digital chalkboard for everybody. We will send out a link to everyone. If you have questions that you need assistance with, please give us a call, send us an email. We're here to help you. And we hope you have a great day. There's a about EDGAR regulations for federal funds and CCT is state funded, so what's the context for EDGAR in this case? The reason we're going over EDGAR is because there's been a lot of questions on financials, and we're using EDGAR as a point of reference, and there are EDGAR rules that are aligned with education code and state funds. So we took out a lot of the federal stuff in this presentation and only really focused on things that do apply to state funds for us.
Or the relation of those federal requirements to the state. So we did as closely as we could, so that was easier for you guys because you're usually overseeing federal and state funds. So if the same, it's easier.
All right, well, everyone has a great day, and I hope everyone's had a great new start of the school year, and we will all be in touch. Thank you.